A sharp crack echoed across the quiet suburban street as the police baton shattered the driver's side window of the gleaming black Lamborghini. Shards of glass exploded across the leather seat while horrified neighbors froze in disbelief. Before the stunned driver could even react, the furious officer yanked the door open and shouted that the expensive sports car had to be stolen, calling the man a thug who didn't belong in that neighborhood. For one endless heartbeat, everyone believed they were witnessing another tragic abuse of power. Then the driver calmly reached inside his jacket, pulled out a leather credential wallet, and held it up with steady hands. The officer's face drained of color. His own hands began to tremble as he realized the badge staring back at him belonged to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. If you believe kindness is stronger than hatred, forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. The man behind the wheel was named Everett Brooks, a respected federal investigator who had spent nearly 15 years dismantling violent criminal organizations across the country. Few people in his quiet hometown knew what he actually did for a living because secrecy protected both his missions and his family. Everett had grown up only a few miles away in a small apartment where his widowed mother worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Every dollar she earned came from exhausting shifts cleaning offices during the day and caring for elderly patients during the evening. She taught her son that dignity was something no one could take unless he willingly gave it away. Those words shaped every decision Everett made throughout his life. Although his career eventually rewarded him with financial success, Everett never forgot where he came from. The Lamborghini parked outside his mother's home had not been purchased to impress strangers. It was the result of years of disciplined saving, successful investments, and countless dangerous assignments that required months away from home. The car represented sacrifice, not arrogance. Yet strangers rarely knew that story. They only saw a luxury vehicle and instantly filled the empty spaces with assumptions. Officer Grant Mercer had been wearing the uniform for barely 4 years. He desperately wanted to prove himself and dreamed of joining an elite tactical unit. His supervisors often praised his confidence but quietly worried that his confidence sometimes became reckless certainty. Instead of asking questions, Grant frequently reached conclusions before gathering evidence. He believed his instincts were almost never wrong, and that dangerous habit had slowly become part of his identity. That warm afternoon, several residents had called the police after noticing the unfamiliar Lamborghini parked outside an older brick home. One caller mentioned seeing a black man sitting inside the vehicle. Another guessed it might have been stolen because no one in the neighborhood recognized the car. By the time dispatch relayed the information, assumptions had quietly transformed into suspicion. Grant arrived already convinced he knew what he would find. Instead of approaching calmly, he marched directly toward the driver's side, ignored Everett's attempts to lower the window, and demanded immediate compliance. When Everett reached toward the center console to retrieve his identification, Grant interpreted the movement as resistance. Without waiting another second, he smashed the window. The silence that followed felt heavier than the sound of breaking glass. Neighbors slowly stepped onto their lawns, unsure whether to intervene or remain silent. Children stopped riding bicycles. Elderly couples watched from shaded porches. Everyone sensed that something had gone terribly wrong. Everett climbed out carefully, making every movement slow and deliberate. Years of FBI training had taught him that escalating emotion rarely solved anything. Tiny cuts from the broken glass covered his left forearm, but he barely acknowledged the pain. Instead, he calmly presented his credentials. The expression on Grant's face changed instantly. His breathing became shallow. His shoulders stiffened. His confidence disappeared. The FBI identification was unmistakably authentic. Before Grant could even process what had happened, 2 unmarked government SUVs entered the neighborhood. Several federal agents stepped out after noticing their supervisor's emergency distress signal had activated during the confrontation. The entire atmosphere shifted. The officer who moments earlier had been shouting now stood frozen while federal agents quickly checked Everett's injuries. One quietly photographed the shattered window, the broken glass scattered across the pavement, and the damage to the vehicle. Grant wanted to speak. Nothing came out. He finally understood that one impulsive decision had placed his career in jeopardy. Everett could easily have demanded immediate disciplinary action. Instead, he surprised everyone by asking the federal agents to lower the tension. He insisted that nobody raise their voices and requested medical attention only after everyone else had calmed down. His composure confused many of the witnesses. They expected anger. They expected revenge. Instead, they witnessed remarkable self-control. An ambulance arrived to clean the small cuts on Everett's arm. As paramedics worked, neighbors slowly gathered nearby. Several admitted they had assumed the Lamborghini couldn't possibly belong to him. Others confessed they never questioned why the police reacted so aggressively because they accepted the same assumptions without thinking. For many, that realization hurt. Among those watching was an elderly woman named Margaret Ellis. She remembered Everett as a polite little boy who used to help carry groceries into her house every Saturday after mowing neighborhood lawns. Tears formed in her eyes as she realized she had nearly forgotten the child she once knew simply because years had passed and appearances had changed. News of the incident spread quickly throughout the city. Body camera footage revealed every painful second. The video showed Everett remaining calm from beginning to end. It also showed Grant escalating the situation without confirming basic facts. Public reaction was immediate. Some demanded Grant lose his badge forever. Others argued that one mistake should not erase years of service. The debate divided the community. Everett remained unusually quiet. Several reporters requested interviews, but he declined each one. He refused to turn the incident into personal publicity. Friends urged him to file massive lawsuits. Lawyers called offering representation. Still, Everett waited. He wanted the investigation to finish before making emotional decisions. Meanwhile, Grant found himself sitting alone at home, unable to sleep. Every replay of the body camera footage felt worse than the last. He recognized not only his procedural failures but also the assumptions that had influenced every decision he made. For the first time since joining law enforcement, he questioned the beliefs he had carried for years without examining them. His father, a retired firefighter, finally sat beside him one afternoon. He didn't yell. He didn't defend him. He simply asked one painful question. What kind of officer do you want people to remember? Grant had no answer. Administrative leave followed. Mandatory investigations began. Training records were reviewed. Community members submitted statements. Every day felt longer than the one before. Several weeks later, the police chief requested a private meeting with Everett. The chief apologized sincerely for what had happened and admitted that rebuilding trust required more than carefully written public statements. Policies would change. Additional training would become mandatory. Officers would receive instruction focused not only on procedures but also on recognizing how unconscious assumptions could influence decisions during stressful encounters. Everett appreciated the honesty. Then he made an unexpected request. He asked to meet Grant privately. Everyone warned against it. Some believed Grant deserved no forgiveness. Others feared the meeting would become confrontational. Instead, two men sat across from each other inside a quiet conference room during the middle of a sunny afternoon. Grant looked exhausted. He apologized before Everett even sat down. The apology wasn't polished. It wasn't prepared by attorneys. It came from genuine regret. He admitted that fear, assumptions, and pride had combined into one terrible decision. He acknowledged that Everett could have been seriously injured because of his actions. His voice cracked as he admitted he no longer recognized the man he had become that afternoon. Everett listened without interruption. When Grant finally finished, silence filled the room. Then Everett shared stories from his own career. He admitted that even federal agents sometimes developed dangerous assumptions if they stopped seeing people as individuals. He described operations where slowing down for just 10 extra seconds prevented unnecessary violence. He explained that courage wasn't charging forward blindly. Real courage often meant stopping, thinking, and refusing to let fear make decisions. Grant lowered his head. Tears rolled down his face. He understood that this conversation was a gift he had not earned. Months later, after completing extensive retraining and disciplinary measures, Grant returned to duty under close supervision. He was no longer the same officer. Instead of rushing toward conclusions, he asked questions first. Instead of assuming guilt, he gathered facts. Younger officers noticed the difference and often wondered why he insisted on slowing situations down. He never hid the reason. Whenever appropriate, he spoke honestly about the mistake that nearly destroyed his career. His story became part of department training. Everett also continued serving his country, but he found another purpose. He began volunteering at community forums where residents and law enforcement met face to face. Those conversations were often uncomfortable, emotional, and difficult. Yet they slowly built understanding that no social media argument ever could. One sunny afternoon almost a year later, Everett returned to the same neighborhood with his repaired Lamborghini. Children smiled as they admired the beautiful car. Instead of suspicion, curious questions filled the air. Everett happily answered each one, explaining that dreams were never limited by where someone started in life. Margaret watched from her porch again. This time she smiled. The neighborhood felt different. Not perfect, but better. Because people had learned that assumptions could shatter lives as easily as a police baton shattered glass. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us what you believe is the greatest lesson in this story. Do you think forgiveness is stronger than revenge, or do you believe accountability is the first step toward real change? Everett never forgot the sound of breaking glass, and Grant never forgot the trembling in his own hands when he realized the truth. One carried scars on his arm. The other carried scars on his conscience. Yet both discovered that while one terrible moment can change a life forever, it does not have to define the rest of it. Justice mattered. Accountability mattered. But so did humility, compassion, and the courage to become a better person after failure. Their story reminded an entire community that true strength is measured not by power, wealth, or authority, but by the willingness to choose wisdom over pride and hope over hatred. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May every act of kindness you show today become the beginning of someone else's second chance.